They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed. Disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. I am very excited to have on Rogueways tonight someone who is clearly soul tribe status and a like mind and heart. Our guest has been walking the truth of spiritual presence and bringing the light of connection to all who encounter him, creating more of what's good, true, and beautiful as he goes, and sharing a deep gift of psychic ability with those who come asking. He's an author and a teacher, a healer and a coach, and a beautiful soul. Robert Lindsy Milne, welcome to Rogueways, and how are you doing tonight?
Very well. Are you sure you're reading the story about the right guy? That's just.
I feel like everyone feels that way.
Okay.
This is my interpretation of you, at the very least.
Okay. I just thought you were just, overstating
Just
yeah. No, well, yeah, about somebody else or something. So, I've really been looking forward to being on your podcast. I just had a great sense about it.
Oh,
and yes, I've had a really fabulous day today. It's just wonderful, actually.
That's awesome. It's carrying with you.
Yeah,
You can all feel it.
it
I
is.
love it.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump in, I do want to say thank you to all of our listeners and supporters and people out there who are so awesome. That's all of you. I'm talking to you who are here listening and sharing with us. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here and for being you. And everybody listening can go check out rogueways.org for all the kinds of stuff from me. There's books, there's pendants, there's offerings of tarot and other such stuff. So go find out at rogueways.org. And Robert, the pointless question of the episode I wanted to ask you is if you have an interesting animal or insect encounter that you would like to share with us.
I live with three. I live with three golden retrievers.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And they're a big part of my work. And just before you asked the question, Tyson came over to say hi.
Oh, hi Tyson.
Yeah. So is that what you meant, or
anything you want, you can take it anywhere you go, anywhere you want to go with it, or if you have a fun story to share or something that Tyson wants.
About 4 years ago, a little bit more, myself and my three golden retrievers, we adopted a dog who was 16 years old, and her name was Christy Kringle. And when she came to stay with us, I was hoping that that we could give her a couple of months of good life. And she was having all kinds of trouble walking, and she was almost crippled. And I bought a red wagon. And when Christy came, so I'd pull her around in the red wagon, and I'd be walking with my three Goldens on one hand and pull the red wagon on the other. And over a short amount of time, Christy went from being a lame old dog on her way out, where at first she couldn't walk maybe 20 yards. And at the peak of the time she was with us, she walked an amazing 400 yards.
Wow.
All in one. Yeah. And she lived for an incredible 14 months, which was more than I could ever have imagined.
You gave her the reason.
It was just, and my Goldens were just absolutely fabulous with her. She was never left alone. There was always one of them with her, right beside her, sleeping beside her, and they never touched her food. It was now if something fell on the floor, it's a different story, all fair in war, right? But they never took any food out of her bowl. They never pushed her out of the way. It was really truly a beautiful experience.
so sweet. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really feel like that speaks to the ability of the soul or the will or however you want to describe it to, find energy and
Yeah.
power to like keep going. But if everything was negative and bad, she may have let go, right? But you gave her
Do you
all
know
this.
what? Actually, okay, so we're talking about that. Let me tell you some more. So how I found Christy Kringle was the breeder I got my dogs from. They breed golden retrievers, but they also breed an ancient Norwegian herding dog called a boohound, and it almost went extinct. And a group of breeders around the world, including in North and South America, or North America, Canada, the United States, got together to save the breed. And the breeder that I come from, she's part of it, and she had posted on her website that this poor dog she was in New Jersey. I'm in Toronto, right? And her owner had died, and she had nowhere to go. And I looked at her, and there was just something about her. I knew, besides the fact that she was this poor old dog, I knew there was something special about her. Like she had done something in her life that was really important. And I found that it was an outrage that this being who had contributed to her species was at the end of her lifetime abandoned and nowhere to go. I just found that wrong.
Yeah.
And I talked to my friend Karen at Keon Kennels in Canada, and I asked her, was Christy still available? And Karen said she was, and then she told me all the reasons why it wouldn't be good for me to adopt her. And I said to Karen, Karen, there's just something about this dog that I just can't let go of, and I know you know that feeling. And she said, I sure do. And would you like me to recommend you? And I said, please. And this was the Norwegian Boohound Rescue Group in New Jersey. And Karen contacted them. And the biggest problem was getting Christy from New Jersey to Toronto. A group of people forms well, I called it by Courier du Bois, but it also could be called Pony Express, and groups of people. She started off. They picked her up in New Jersey, and one family took her on a ride. They stayed with this family, then went to the next family, all the way across New Jersey, New York. And then Karen and her husband drove across Niagara Falls, well, the bridge over Niagara Falls, picked her up in Tonawanda, and brought her home to me. And it turned out that all the people who, I'm going to cry, all the people who were helping Christy had puppies, grandpuppies, or great grandpuppies from Christy Kringle.
Wow.
Yes.
That is so special.
So and a group of people got together and brought her home to us.
Oh.
It was so special.
Wow. She deserved
Yeah.
that and more.
She certainly did. It turned out that she was instrumental in her career of saving the breed.
Wow. You
So
can feel it.
I could feel it and wanted it, and it was you can make me cry.
Sorry.
She started out as a poor old abandoned dog. In a very short amount of time, she became a full-fledged, active, contributing member of the pack. It was really wonderful to see.
And she brought all those people together too,
And she brought all those people together.
Opportunity to give back.
Absolutely.
So cool. Wow.
Absolutely. So you threw that out to me, so I thought that that's an animal story.
Yeah, that was a great
Okay.
animal story.
Okay.
Well, and
Yeah.
it also touches on, I think, part of what we're talking tonight, which is this psychic ability. And I think you trusting that intuition and seeing her and knowing like, I need to get that dog. Like that's my dog. Actually.
Yes, yes, and she spoke to me, and I sensed it. But there was something else in that. I saw Christy, and I said to myself, "What happened to you that you ended up like this?" And then I thought, I bet her owner died. And then I said to myself, I also bet that that's why she's abandoned, was because her owner died. And her owner would be really upset over what was happening. Actually, that's exactly what happened. But what I could feel, now I've never talked about this publicly. I could feel that woman when I looked at when I contacted my friends at Keon Kennels, or when I was looking at the picture of Christy on their website. I could feel her begging me to take her dog.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I can't
Yeah.
imagine leaving behind the dog. I mean, the dog is, going to know our owner's gone, and they're having their own grieving going on. That
No, she was a
don't
breeder,
understand.
and she left some behind, but were younger. But she was afraid because Christy was so old. I felt her plead.
I'm so glad you heard the call and did that beautiful act of.
Yeah, it
of
was
doing-
pretty special, you know.
Sorry. I'm sorry to
No,
make you cry.
no. Well, you know, it's a beautiful experience for me.
We cry a lot on Roadway, so you're in good company.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
It's an
Okay. Well,
emotional
it must be.
show.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did it. You know,
Now you're part of the club.
I'm broken in, as it
Yeah.
were, right? Yeah.
Well, let's.
So yeah, my psychic ability. Well, that's part of it, and that is a part of it, and incidentally, I've done that kind of work over my career as well. Not necessarily with dogs, but with, say, a lost person, or a dead person, or a dying person, or things like that.
Yeah. How did that come about? I mean, how did you?
Which one?
How did you all of it? How do you even know that you were psychic, or how did it develop? in
Well,
life?
I have been a professional psychic for 56 years.
Wow.
And in my career, in my lifetime, I've done more than 100,000 psychic connections. And I started working at a tea room in Toronto in the mid 1960s. And it's how I was a homeless teenager. I was a homeless child. And the way that I got off the street was going to work at the Cozy Tea Room doing readings. But the way I survived on the street was using my intuition, my psychic ability, my psychic skills. The first time I was 14 when I was on the street. But that wasn't the first time that I did that I was doing readings or being psychic. I've always had a sense. I've always known what was going on, even though I didn't know what was going on. I always knew what was going on. So one time I came home from school. I would have been in kindergarten or grade 1, and I came home from school for lunch. That was back in the days when kids went home from school and mother made lunch, right? So I can't remember if I went back to school after that or you know, so it was kindergarten or grade 1. And I said to my mother, that's why I would have been 5, 6. And I said, Grandma Harris died today. Grandma Harris wasn't just my grandmother, she was actually my great grandmother, who lived in England. We lived in Toronto. Now, back in that era, 60 years ago, 65 years ago, people didn't make long distance phone calls. There was no internet, so news traveled slowly. So I said to my mother, Grandma Harris died today. but my great grandmother, and I'd only seen her once in my life. My mother became angry with me and said, "Don't say those terrible things." And she hit me for saying those awful things. The next night at dinner, my mother, father, my sister Gail, and I, we were sitting at the table. My mother said to my father, "Grandma Harris died today. Grandma Harris died yesterday." And I thought my father was going to hit my mother for saying bad things.
Yeah.
To my astonishment, they talked about it and never even asked me or talked to me about it, and maybe didn't even remember. So I used to say things and I would get into trouble, like, "Uncle Harold, that wasn't Aunt Sally." Who was that? That one definitely got me hit.
Yeah.
I didn't know. So I was doing that kind of stuff, getting into trouble often. I was about 9, and in Canada, certainly in those days, and in Toronto, the Toronto Maple Leafs, every kid's dream was to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. My dad was a big hockey fan, and my father took me to a Stanley Cup, semifinal Stanley Cup game between Boston and Toronto. And it was the third game of the series. The series was tied 1-1. The game was tied 1-1, and it went into overtime. And when the teams came on for the first overtime period, I became drunk, and the guys were just stretching, right? The game hadn't even started. I knew number 17 with the Toronto Maple Leafs. His name was Gary Eamon, and he wasn't a star, right? He was a mediocre player in the great, in the best hockey league in the world, right? I knew he was going to score. In fact, not only did I know he was going to score, it felt like it had already happened. So anyway, the referee blows the whistle, everybody skates off the ice in the starting lineup, and they do they're going to drop the puck at center ice. Eamon's not even on the ice, by the way. And we're at Maple Leaf Gardens. They turn, there's 18,000 people in the whole arena. They darken the lights. The entire building's silent, and just as the referee drops the puck, I couldn't hold my excitement in any longer, because I thought that Eamon had already scored. That's how I saw it. And I jumped up and started yelling and screaming in this dark building with 18,000 people in, and they turned and looked at me and my dad. And my dad put his hand on my shoulder and he just said, "Sit down." And anyway, the referee drops the puck, the game starts, and I was sitting there looking around, and I realized nobody knew Eamon was going to score. And I got kind of quiet, and then, a couple of minutes later, Eamon jumps over the boards, skates towards the net, and a guy named Red Kelly, had red hair, passes the puck to him. Eamon tips the puck in the net, and the building erupts. And I look around the building, and I'm seeing all the flashlights going off and people yelling and screaming. And it was then that I knew other people didn't see things like me. And it was then I knew what I was going to do with my life. And it was at that point. Now, I didn't know what it was called. I wasn't sure what color it was going to be or what pattern or whatever. I just knew that that's what I was going to do. And it is.
Isn't it like, I feel like I've had similar sorts of experiences that make me
Tell me some.
Well,
share one. Come
I
on,
don't
let
know
me
if I can
hear.
think of a specific example,
Oh, okay.
but I just know that I find myself going, wait, didn't that already happen? Or didn't we already
Yes.
know this? Or like, why don't you guys know that? Or like, I get really confused
Yeah.
sometimes, and time feels very hard to understand to me because I'm just not sure where I am at. Or
Well, the reason for
whatever.
that happens to be you travel through time. So you actually, your mind actually goes into the future. Incidentally, it also goes into the past. and what you but it's actually and it's here and now, like it's real to you,
Yeah.
even though it hasn't happened, but it will happen, and it does hapen.
And then when it does happen, I'm like, didn't this already happen?
Right.
Am I the
And
only
other
one?
people, yeah, right. That's being a time traveler. When I do
I call
readings,
myself a time traveler.
oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, lucky guess.
Yeah.
So when I do readings for people, I see someone's like, now this is just in my advanced years of, because like I've been doing it for, 56
Decades.
years.
Yeah.
56. And so at this point in my life, when I do readings, and I still do, a few years ago, I became semi-retired and cut back to about 500-600 readings a year. But now I'm working full time again. Anyway, I see someone's life from conception to completion. And now, conception, I don't see the details of it. I just see the energy there, right? And the same with completion. And when I do readings, I go forward and backwards in time several times. And I often can get confused what year or what month I'm in. And if I'm doing, say I do 4 or 5 readings in a day, I've moved forward and backward in time 80 years, 10, 12 times, and I will get lost. So when I do readings, and my readings are a monologue rather than a dialogue, I don't ask questions. Yeah, I do. How old are you? What month is your next birthday? So how old are you? Tells me where you are in time and what month. That makes it more specific. Yeah. I don't care. Like I don't care what sun sign they are. I'm just looking at specifically where they are in time. Yeah. And every time when I do a reading, it starts off, here we are today in August 2010, psychic reading for blah blah blah, and that's how I start every reading. So that tells me where I am in time, and it's like an anchor, so I can get back to. Now, when I say get back to, it's important to get back to it when I'm doing the actual reading. That's one.
Are you hearing things, seeing things, all of the above, or how are things coming to you when you're doing these readings?
Yeah, it's a great question. I basically know, and what I do is I say what comes in to my mind. Now, it's getting more evolved after all these years. When I'm doing a reading, and like I said, and I tell people, please don't interrupt me. Let me speak. Because if you interrupt me, there's a very good chance I may not be able to get back on track. Because what I'm saying isn't what I'm thinking about. What I'm saying has already been processed, and what I'm thinking about is what I'm about to say. And then I also may be thinking about what I could say, and then also at the same time what I might be doing later on that night for dinner. Yeah. and if you can imagine 4 TV screens on the wall, each one on a different channel, each playing at the same time, that's how it is when I'm tuning in. So if you interrupt me, it's like unplugging the TV sets. Besides, it pisses me off, because it does, yeah. Right? It does irritate me, and because I have to work really hard to get it back, and sometimes I can't, and sometimes I don't want to, for being stupid, right? So, because it's not like I don't tell them.
Right.
Okay. So I also say, please don't interrupt, even if you think I've made a mistake. because when I'm doing your reading, it's like painting a picture. So I'll paint a little bit here and I'll paint a little bit there, and then I'll look at it and I'll change this and I'll change that. And if I don't like the color, it's like doing that. And it's a glorious state of mind to be in too.
It's like, it reminds me too of when you actually had those TVs when we were younger that tuned. You know, you're like, you get to the channel, but you're like, well, that's not quite it. You
Yeah.
like tune a little. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
like that.
And after all these years, and I've only been connecting with, I've always been a single act. I've never worked with other people, so I'm quite different in that way, and so it's only been in the last year or so that I've had any contact with any other people that do readings.
Oh.
So, and I'm noticing some of the techniques I use, other people don't have any idea about. So, for example, when I doing a reading for somebody and they're in a crisis, and say the person's 35 or 40, whatever, what I do is I go forward into the future to say when they're 80 or 85, and then I will look back into the past through their eyes at 80, and I will describe to my client how they feel at 80 about the way they solved and handled the problem. And what that does is tell them two things. One, I'm going to be around for a while, and two, I found the answer. And so when I give bad news, and you've got to do it sometime, right? It's part of the job. When I give bad news, the way I do it is I go into the future and I tell the person the result of the bad news I'm about to tell them. But first I tell them what they get, what they'll experience on the positives. Because like when we have a shitty time, the law of karma, right? You have a shitty time, you're gonna have a good time. Because where we are one way, we are equally the opposite. That's just the way it is. There is no other way. What we are one way, equally the opposite. What goes around comes around. So when you have a difficult time, you'll experience the opposite. So I look at what the experience of the opposite is, describe it in great detail. Then I'll come back to the present and say, and oh, by the way, and then I'll tell them, but they've already been prepared for the good part already. So that's some of the ways that I'm doing stuff. I didn't know that other people didn't do that.
Yeah, I can relate because I do tarot readings, and I always tell people.
Oh, do you?
I have no idea how other people do tarot readings. I just know how I do tarot readings.
Dude, what deck do you use?
I use the Handel deck. Okay,
the Handel, I don't know that one. I only knew the Rider deck, but that was because they made me do tarot readings at the tea room. I couldn't do,
You're probably weren't even really necessarily doing tarot. You're just saying yeah, here's what's gonna happen. I know, and the card, sure, yeah, the card, whatever.
Well, here's the way it happened. So I'd been, this was wintertime. It was January, and it was a really fucking cold January that I remember. And as I said, I was about 15 and a half. And I had survived by my instincts and intuitions. And anytime I was in trouble, and children can get in trouble on the street, anytime I was in trouble, I always had an option. I could use my intuition and psychic abilities to find a solution, or I would be offered an illegal or immoral way to solve the problem. There was no right or wrong answer. There was no good or bad, right or wrong. However, and I didn't understand this then, I was 15. However, depending upon the decision I made, led me in a specific direction. There was no right or wrong. It was based on the decision I made, though. Almost all the time, I chose to follow my instincts and intuitions. And there were a couple of times where, while I didn't do anything illegal, there were a couple of times I had to do something immoral that, a child in a snowstorm will pretty much do anything to get a place to sleep that's warm. So almost always I chose that path. And my psychic abilities, my intuition was honed on the streets of downtown Toronto as I survived and I developed my skills there. It was an incredible training program.
Yeah.
I was seeing it. So I heard that if you worked at the Cozy Tea Room in Toronto doing readings, you would get, if you worked in the afternoon, you would get a cup of tea, a sandwich, some cookies, and you'd get paid at the end of the shift. And if you worked in the evening, you got a hot meal, cup of tea, cookies, and you get paid. And I applied at the Cozy Tea Room, and I phoned and told them I could do readings. Now, in Canada, up until July the 1st, 2018, it was against the law to do readings here. It was called the Witchcraft Act.
Really?
No, absolutely. We had this, it was against the law. Now, it was the Witchcraft Act. It was enacted in the late 1800s. It just never came off the books. And it started off with anyone who fraudulently, and there were 4 sections. 1, tell fortunes for a consideration. Well, that's me. Accuse somebody of a crime using an occult or crafty science. C was to pretend to cure somebody from an illness using an occult or crafty science. I can't remember the 4th one. Is punishable by summary conviction of not more than $5,000 and not more than 1 year in jail. And that was on the books until July the 1st, 2018. The way the tea room got around it was they sold cookies and sandwiches and for your own entertainment, and there were signs on the wall, right? All readings are for entertainment purposes. And so that's how they got around it. So you had to do tea leaf readings, had to do card readings. I've never done tea leaf readings. I remember, having the audition was I had to do a reading for Mrs. Cox, who owned the place, right? And she's been in the business. If you could imagine a madam handling, having a tea room, would be kind of like her. She and I used to have fights, but that's another story. So I applied. But I had to do tea leaf readings, and I showed up and I picked the cup up, and I looked in it, and it just looked like blobs of shit in the bottom of a teacup, right? So what I did is I held the. Oh, by the way, I knew I could say fuck on your show because I started listening to some of your stuff.
That's you heard me say it.
That's right. Well, because I noticed that that's the way you're comfortable speaking.
Yes.
Me too. Me too. All right.
Good
So anyway, I just took the teacup, put it up here like that, held my hands out like this, and I just looked at her and did a psychic reading the way I normally did. And then I had to do a card reading using playing cards. I don't know what that was. So I just put them on the table, and I was a flamboyant kid. I was pretty expressive. I just put the cards down on the table and told her a story, not a lie, a story about the cards, and telling her what it meant and all I was really doing was tuning in and being psychic. That day, I started at the Cozy Tea Room. And that day, I got a sandwich and a cup of tea and cookies. And I got a hot meal and a sandwich and a cup of tea and cookies. And I got paid. And that night, I had a place to sleep. And the next day, I had a job. And I worked at the Cozy Tea Room from the time I was about 15 and a half till I was about 20. And I worked 5 days a week, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And during those times, I would do readings, 25, 30, one day, even 40 readings in the day. We'd start at noon. We would go until all the people were read. And I was known as the hippie reader named Bob Milne. And that's how it started.
I was going to say, I bet you made a name for yourself pretty quickly.
I did, yeah, in a short amount of time. Now, there was one guy there. He was a really nice man. His name was, well, his working name was Red Hawk, and he was part Aboriginal. He was part indigenous. Anyway. His real name was Laurie Claus, and he was considerably older than me. There were a lot of readers at the tea room. It wasn't just like him and me, right? There were a lot. Red Hawk was so successful that he would, the tea room would open at 11:30 and we'd start work at noon. Red Hawk would get to work at 11:45, and there would be, the whole tea room would be filled with people wanting to see him. Before he even got to work, there were so many booked, he couldn't do them all. And people used to make their living from the ones that Red Hawk couldn't do. And I was one of those. He was really good to me and kind to me, and he used to get private parties on Sundays and take me with him. So there were times where I worked 6 days a week doing readings. By the time I was about 21, I'd done my 10,000 hours.
Yeah, which if people don't know the reference, that's when you become an expert in your field.
Well, that's right. By the time I was about 21 or 22, I'd done that, and the discipline was something. It was like being in the military.
Yeah.
It didn't matter that you're sick, didn't matter that you're sad, didn't matter nothing. You do the job, and that's how it was.
You really, so the combination, because I feel like a lot of people who are in survival sort of situations discover their connection to their inner self, higher self, whatever you want to call these things, and kind of get, it's like they're forced into using their empathic, psychic sort of skills. So you had that, and then you had this very disciplined, like, you're going to do this over and over and over and over, and that's the other best way to do anything. So
yeah.
It's like
So
you set it up for yourself or something.
Yes. Now, I used to at times resent Mrs. Cox, because in those days, it cost $2.50, and the tea room got $1.50, and the reader got $1. Oh, that used to eat my guts out. You have no idea how much that used to eat my guts out. I didn't mind that Mrs. Cox was making money. What I minded is that Mrs. Cox was making more money on my talent.
Just for having space. Yeah.
You know, just right. That's right. And even more profound, making money from my people, our people, we who do readings, we who give service. And most of the people that I've met that do this work live terrible lives and live poorly. And most of people that do this work are badly traumatized and have addictions and illnesses and live poorly. And that is what made me angry about that. That's what it was. And so I would, and I was a little angry anyway. And I would get in arguments with Mrs. Cox, and I would get fired or I'd quit. And then but I was so successful, and popular. Mrs. Cox would phone me, or I'd call, and especially when it gets close to rent day, right? I would, one of us would call the other, and then I'd come back to work, and we would, it'd be kumbaya for a month or two, and then away we go again. At around 21, there was, I don't know if I got fired, I quit, I don't know what, but I just decided that was the end of the parade for me there. At that time, I had heard that when a young man becomes a priest, he makes a vow to say a mass every day of his life. And I decided that if this was going to be my calling, if this is what I was going to do and grow old doing it, I decided that I would make a vow. And the vow I made was I would do at least one reading or practice doing readings every day of my life. And I managed to do that without missing a day, doing a psychic reading or practicing. I managed to do about 30, little more than 30 years without missing a day. And then one day I missed a day, but that's because I just wanted to know what it felt like not to do it.
Yeah, this is a new experience.
Yeah, to not do it. Yeah, and then I got back on the regime again. And even now, I'm 72. I do that every day. Every day I do it. I do either a reading or I practice doing readings. And I'm at the fortunate time in my life where I can pick and choose who comes to me. And I do. Now, it's always better to actually play the game than it is to practice, right? So like a musician, it's always better to play it, perform it, than to practice it. You get more out of it. So if on a day that I'm having a practice day, like a day off, if someone calls and I'm just in the mood to talk, or I answer the phone, that person will get a reading, regardless of how long the waiting list is. And sometimes if I really like the person, they won't even pay for it, because what I'm doing is practicing. And so.
That's awesome. Do you have practices or like meditations that you do to like stay spiritually open or sound or anything?
Nah, I'm not that spiritual. Okay. I just do it. I just do it. I kind of joke and say, yeah, I'm not that spiritual. Maybe I am. My life is one of service, and I get great joy out of doing what I do. I've done so many wild things in my life. I'm not quite sure I really could have the title of being spiritual.
I understand that.
You know that one? Like, oh, you're so special. Well, maybe not. You don't know my story.
Yeah.
So
you me sometimes.
Yeah. And while I may have evolved, that part still lives in me. And incidentally, I wouldn't change hardly anything. I'd if I had the chance to do it over again, I'd do most everything over again. So now let me talk about being spiritual, because I stay away from that because when people say, "Oh, I'm spiritual," what they're saying is, I'm higher than you. Don't you hate that bullshit? Yeah. Okay, now, okay.
You're not better than anybody.
Well, that's right. But when people that proclaim, like if you have to proclaim you're spiritual, maybe you better take a look.
Yeah.
Now, when somebody says, "Oh, I'm spiritual," or if I'm saying, Lindsay is a spiritual woman, that doesn't mean you're positive.
That's true.
You see, spiritual is like everything. Um, what we are one way, we are equally the opposite. And that if there's darkness, there must be light. If there's light, there must be darkness. If there's good, there must be bad. If there's high, there must be low. So being spiritual isn't necessarily good or bad. It's being spiritual. Like there was a dude named Anton LaVey. Anton LaVey wrote the book, The Satanic Bible. He was a devil worshiper, and he created the Satanic Church of Satan in California.
Very spiritual guy.
And he's a spiritual guy, but I wouldn't want him blessing me. You know? Okay, but he's still spiritual. So when someone's saying they're spiritual, you know, just remember, it doesn't mean it's positive.
Yeah. And we spend a lot of time, in fact, I have a show on Thursdays called Middle Path where we talk about how to live in connection, deeper connection with yourself, basically. And a lot of time kind of unwrapping like the new age, really sickly, sweet, like gooey falsehoods and like the
So how about judgment? You are judgmental. Judge not, yes, ye be judge yourself. Well, hold on. Just hang on to your horse for a minute. Judgment. I have to confess, Lindsay, I have judged you.
Yeah.
I have judged you. I have looked at you, assessed you, and I have made a judgment. I like you.
That is a judgment.
Okay? So if I have an opinion, I've made a judgment. So that doesn't mean that I feel negative. It only means I've made an assessment. I have formed an opinion. And we do that all the time. So instead of poking your finger and, you know, holier than thou, right? Just chill out.
Absolutely.
And here's another thing. Take responsibility for your own spiritual growth and let other people do theirs. Just saying.
Yes.
You know?
And I have a really hard time because people will ask me like, well, what are you? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, what do you do? I'm like, I do readings, I do this, I do that, I like help people heal. And they're like, oh, so you're like this. I'm like, I don't know. Like, if you need that label, I guess, but I don't know what to tell you I am.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. What kind of readings do you do?
Well, I do tarot readings.
Yeah.
And then I do blessings, and I do some healings, and I do spiritual healing, like soul level, and sometimes that looks like past lives, and sometimes it looks like, what do I call it? Soul retrievals. And it just depends, because I do spiritual ceremony for people, and I basically let their soul and their guides show me what needs to happen and what's happening, and I'm just kind of watching, you know, like.
Do you see them?
Yes.
Does the guide really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, which is one of the things I was going to ask you. Do you
No.
have that sense or have that interaction?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, everybody's so different.
Often people have suggested that I channel or think, you know, beings speak through me. I've never acknowledged that. And for a lot of, well, there was a long time I didn't believe in God.
Me too.
And well, I did. Okay. So, and one of the reasons that I didn't believe in God, and I then said that everything that I do is my skill, and it's got nothing to do with God. It has to do with my ability, my skill, my hard work. It all comes from me. The reason I didn't believe in God is because if I believed in God and things were coming through me, that would mean that I was doing God's work. And that would mean that, like in the old days, you know, in the olden days, that would mean that I was a prophet, Well, I love the title, right? Hey, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a prophet. Like, I love that. Yeah, right. I'm just a prophet, but I couldn't accept my worthiness to do God's work. I wasn't worthy to do that. So to avoid facing that unworthiness, I just simply denied there was a God.
Do you think you really believed it at any point, or were you kind of always at some
I was
level?
lying to. I was lying to myself. I was lying to myself.
Me too.
I was. Yeah. Well, I would have had to face the fact that I was worthy, which I was not prepared to accept. So the way it changed. There was one time I was doing a reading for a long-term client. I think it was in Edmonton, Alberta at the time, and the way this guy came to me as my client is his mother-in-law, grandma, was my client first, and he came to me from her. So grandma, she was really a beautiful lady. She was living with the. What you doing? Where'd you go?
Oh, people chat.
Are we
and I look over and see it and see
is that what they're doing?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean there are people watching us?
Yeah.
Oh shit! Oh no!
They say that you look very good for your age, which I was thinking
thank
too.
you.
So
Thank
we
you,
all
thank
thought
you,
were much
thank you.
younger.
No, yep. July 13th, 1949 was my birthday. Okay, so anyway, Paul came to me for a reading. I was doing his reading, and I knew Grandma, and Grandma was living by herself, and Paul and his wife, and Paul's wife was Grandma's daughter, and I did readings for her too. And Paul and his wife, they decided that they were going to build a special apartment in their brand new house so that Grandma could move in. And Grandma started giving her stuff away. And I was doing a reading for Paul, and he was all excited about this great idea and, yada, 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 about Grandma coming to stay and wanting, how they could look after her. And I said to him, Paul, I don't think Grandma. Now I called her Grandma because she, like it wasn't like I was, using that word like an undertaker talks when you say, oh, well, I'm taking care of Grandma. Like, how dare you call my grandma Grandma? It was like I knew the woman, and that people called her that. So I said to him, Paul, I don't think you're gonna get your wish. I don't think Grandma's gonna move to the apartment. And I don't think Grandma wants to. And I think that Grandma's giving away all her stuff because she's getting ready to die. When I said that to him, I absolutely believed 100% that what I was saying was right, that it was the right way, it was the right thing to say, and I said it in the right way. Because up until that time, I never would have done such a thing. Never. Because I would never feel comfortable telling somebody that, because I would never really be sure. At the time, I believed it. That night, now I was on tour, so I was doing like 10, 12, 14 readings in the day. So I was like working. The most I had ever done on tour over a period of time was like 20 readings a day, 20 half-hour readings. I would do 10 in a row, take a 1 hour break, and then do 10 more. And then I'd go party all night. I was 25, right?
Yeah.
So then I'd go out and party all night and start again.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Now I just get tired. So go to sleep. That night I went to sleep and I woke up from a deep sleep and I woke up with, who the fuck are you to say such a thing to that man? How dare you? What's the matter with you, Robert? And I was horrified that I had done such a thing. And I was telling my best friend about it a couple of days later. And Bob said to me, he said, Robert, I've never wanted to say this to you, but I have always suspected that you channel. And he said, now I know for sure that you do, because you were in that focus, in that energy, and you knew it was right. And it was the human part of you that woke up and questioned what you did. And I thought, oh, okay, that's how it happens. I wasn't interested in following it any farther and becoming a specific channeler. I just allowed it, just put it, put it like an arrow in my quiver, as another tool, and instead of questioning it, I just let it come out. So am I channeling? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Am I giving the right information? Yeah, that's the right information. That's why. So I don't know if I channel or not, but whenever I do, it seems to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I feel like people want to put things in boxes, like that's a psychic and that's a channeler and that's a medium and this is that. And then I'm like,
are you kidding me? That's amazing. That's exactly what I've been bitching about for all my career.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what to tell people what I do or what I am because I'm like, I don't know. Like, well, a lot of weird stuff happens. Let's see what we can do.
In my work, the way I started out, I often would not, I still don't, I would often not tell people what I do, for fear of harassment.
Yeah.
And
a lot different.
Well, first of all, it was against the law. I could have got busted. Yeah. What did they ask? What was the question? Ask them.
If we have intelligence, shouldn't something with intelligence give rise to us? I think it's a question about whether or not there's God and creation.
But what?
If we have intelligence, shouldn't something with intelligence give rise to us? I think it's a question about God and creation, that we're created beings.
It's whatever it is, and whoever wrote that, whatever their perception of God is in fact correct. However, whatever God is to you, God is something different to me. Mm-hmm. And each one of us have an individual connection with whatever that entity God is. And there are those that are of lesser intelligence. There are those of superior intelligence. Each one has a connection with the Creator. And each one, whether it be a dog, a snail, a flower, an ant, a rock, is all a creation of God, and all has a different connection.
Amen.
So praise your God, praise your Lord, but it's not everybody's.
I love it. I love it. I feel like I don't remember what we were talking about right before that question, but
it was a good question.
But it was a good question.
Yeah.
I also was wondering if there's times when something comes up that you don't share with a person or don't tell them or aren't supposed to or something. Do you know what I mean?
Well, if I see it, I'm supposed to.
Okay.
Now, sort of. A real example. My first tour of South Africa, I had a contract with South African Broadcasting, 3 years in a row, and I toured through South Africa, appearing on South African Broadcasting radio and TV shows across the country. Very first show I did, I'd been off the plane for like 24 hours and flying from Toronto to Durban, to Johannesburg, was around the world. and the show that I was on was a show called The Felicia Show. And Felicia was Africa's version of Oprah. This woman was a very powerful woman, and her show was like numero uno. It was a live TV show that takes callers as well as have people in the audience that would come up for readings. So my agreement is, and it's everywhere, I'll deal with stuff, no blood and guts and gore. I'll deal with things, but I will not allow somebody's vulnerability, weakness to be made a spectacle of. I will not allow that. That's the rule. Okay, that's the rule. And if not, you know, I'll do other shows or not at all. But no blood and guts and gore. Halfway through the show, and I was still going through jet lag and stuff. We're just about to go to a commercial, and I lean over to, and there were people coming up to the microphone asking questions. There were two microphones in the audience, and I saw this woman get up. She was a black woman, and there's a reason I told you this. She was a black woman, and as she got up to the microphone, we were just about to go to commercial. As we were going to commercial, I leaned over to Felicia, and I said, see the woman that just stood up to the microphone? Not her. I'll see her after the show. And Felicia said, okay. And I got up. Now it's live. I got up. I had to pee so bad. So I got up and went to the can, came back. And who do you think's on the microphone? And as the director's counting down, you know, with his hands, you know, in the 3, 2, 1, boom, there's that woman. And Felicia goes right to that woman. And I kind of blanked. I didn't know what to say. And then I just said to this woman, I said, obviously you are a very powerful woman. What would you like to know? And she said, my 11-year-old daughter didn't come home. And I said, how long ago? And she said, she hasn't been home for about 5 nights. Now, that's dangerous in America or in Canada. In Africa, it's deadly. And I knew what happened to that woman's child. I felt it and saw it. And I was on live TV. And that woman asked that question. I will be damned if I would tell that mother what happened to her baby. I wouldn't do it in real life, what happened to that baby. Now, I'm not sure how you are, but one of the things I teach with my my students is what's coming through you, it's not for you, and you must not keep it in you. So you can pass stuff through you, and you got to get it all out. And when you get it all out, it doesn't hurt you. Yeah. But if you keep it in you, it will hurt you. So do you remember the movie The Green Mile and that big giant John Coffey, right? So in essence, what John Coffey would do is he would take the illness or the whatever, take it into his body and release it. Well, when he was saving the woman's life who had the brain tumor, he took her energy and he kept it. And they took him back to the prison. And you saw this giant of a man get weak and coughing because he was holding that energy that wasn't his inside. It's poison. And then what he did is he spread it out to the bad people. And then he fell asleep and then woke up. That's what it really is like, only we don't see that. I held that in me, knowing that I was going to get hurt. but I could not allow myself to give her that information. And I wasn't right in myself for a couple of months. It was a really deep injury. And like my hair got all greasy. I got tired. And I could barely make it through the tour. And that was the first stop.
I can't believe she did that to you.
It wasn't about me or her or
not
the woman
with the daughter. What?
I know.
Okay.
It wasn't about the woman who asked the question. It wasn't about me. It was about that woman's ratings. I took a hit. Yeah, I wasn't right. It took me about 6 months to get past it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was very, very giving of you. And
there was no thought in it, Lindsay. You know that. There was no decision. It wasn't like, oh, this could happen. It was just protect. You're like that. You know that. That's what makes people like us special. We have a different type of wiring. Most people that I've met that do this, well, my instinct, it's not what I can get, but what can I do? Is the first is my default. Well, can that mess you up? It can. What can I do rather than what can I get? So you don't negotiate a deal. You just do what you can do, and basically you might not get anything for it except for, oh, thanks a lot. Yeah. But once again, when you're focused on what can I do rather than what can I get, you don't worry about that.
yeah, it's actually something I have to work on a lot. To first of all, charge money at all is hard because we're trained, I think, not to, right? And then also to not do too much, right? Like
is that because it's wrong to use a spiritual gift or to get paid by a God-given gift?
That's why I guess we're taught that, but I had to
Okay.
undo it, right?
Can I help you undo it a bit more?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so Tom Brady, I'm not a football fan, but Tom Brady is the winningest quarterback in history. This man has a God-given talent, and he has made bazillions. And guess what he hasn't? He hasn't lost his gift. So we humans, we have thumbs, right? We've got thumbs. The way we move our thumbs separates us from every other living being on the planet. That's a God-given gift to humans. So that gives us the ability to hold things and to build things. God-given talent. So you make money because you can move your thumb right? God, you're going to lose your talent? Well, people haven't lost it yet. So anyone that says, if you get paid, you're going to lose your talent, is jealous because they can't do it.
That's probably true.
And they just don't like you doing it.
Well, and they also have this attitude of like, well, why would you just give it away if you can do that? Why wouldn't you just give it away? I'm like, oh, I did for years, and now I'm not.
Right. Well, yeah, but then, I was going to say, but then I started getting paid, and I could pay my rent, and then after a while, I got paid, I could pay my mortgage.
It turns out that I can do more for people if I am living healthily and supported. Imagine that.
And for me, I could do more readings for more people.
True.
Because I covered my overhead, and made a profit.
Yeah. I'm okay with it now. Well, I think I'm becoming more and more okay with it. I at least got to the point where I started charging, and then now I'm realizing there's some things I maybe could evaluate the value of.
Okay, so giving and receiving is like breathing. exhaling is giving, inhaling is receiving. So when you exhale too much, your body will die an unpleasant death. And if you're in a relationship and you give too much, the relationship will die an unpleasant death. Inhaling is receiving. If you inhale too much, you're going to die unpleasantly. And if you're in a relationship and you receive too much, that relationship will die an unpleasant death. And what I've noticed about those relationships where one gave too much and one took too much, both of them are resentful and bitter.
That's very true.
And balance is the key to power.
That should just be the quote of the evening. Balance is
Okay.
the key to power.
All right, I got a million of them.
This is a question from the chat as well. A while ago, someone asked if you have, or if you know your blood type, do you have negative blood type?
No, I'm ORH positive.
See, this is because people think that skills and abilities like these come with a blood type, and it sometimes seems true, but then there's always...
These types of skills are that just about every mammal has, and and by the way, we're mammals, and it is a natural, instinctive ability that we have. In fact, that ability that almost everyone has is what caused us to get out of the caves and evolve. So have you ever been somewhere and maybe you're having dinner and you look up and someone's been looking at you just out of the clear blue? Or have you ever looked over at somebody and then all of a sudden they turn and look at you? Have you ever been thinking about, walking down the street and you think, oh, I got to call home. And all of a sudden it was because you have that instant. Well, now most people can do that. So if you take a bell-shaped curve and you take one person and put them at one end of the spectrum and they will have absolutely zero awareness. And then follow that bell-shaped curve around to the other end, and then there's one person that absolutely has 100% total awareness and uses that. And the rest of us are somewhere in between. So it's our unconscious awareness, it's our ability to instinctively survive. So I've taken that natural ability and expanded upon it.
Yeah, I love that visual. I feel like that's really helpful.
Which one? Which visual?
The bell curve one, because I feel like everyone knows that they have some level of this, and to understand that.
And then there's what then there's some poor person at one end that doesn't.
Yeah.
So you can take that skill and evolve it, develop it as much as you can, but you can only take it as far as what the ability that you have. So I also see that when we incarnate, we create a kind of template for ourselves. And the template that is Lindsay, whether it's you, Lindsay, or this Robert Lindsay, the template that is me is unique. There is no other one in the universe like me. There's no other one like you. So that template that we have contains everything we're capable of experiencing inside that template. Now, we only have one limitation inside that template, is that we have free choice and free will to do anything we want inside the structure of the template. So, for example, it's unlikely you could have played basketball in the NBA, but you can play basketball. And you can play basketball to the limit of your ability. It's unlikely that you could have been a concert violinist, but you could learn to play the violin a little bit. Okay, so you have free choice and free will to do whatever it is that you want. The only restriction is the limitation of that template. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. It's what do you want to experience? And the only rule with that is what we do one way, we must do equally the opposite. So you can do anything that you want. And if you are happy playing basketball and you know the best that you can do is to be able to go out and play with your friends and play hoops in the backyard, but that thrills you, hey, it's like winning the championship in the NBA. If you play, it's that good. Or you can focus on what is even better for you, and there's no right or wrong.
I love it. That's such a beautiful explanation. It is so true. It feels so true. Is that, do you think, why people who seem to have skills like these or travel in these directions experience such trauma usually, or felt so traumatized?
Which I'm sorry, what
Because
some
of
people?
that equal and opposite sort of
We
rule?
Sure. Now that's a little bit more complicated than that. Say getting traumatized. Now being traumatized is a physical assault to your brain, even though you may not have been punched in the head. So being traumatized, once upon a time it was thought there was only two ways of responding to stress: run away, right? Take to flight, or stay and fight. So over time, and with the invention of all these fancy machines, they can measure our brains now. And what's been learned is that there's actually three ways of dealing with stress or threat. You can take to flight, take to fight. But when you're in a situation and you perceive the situation to be so great that if you try to run away, you'll get killed. And if you stand and fight, you'll get killed. The third response is we freeze and we melt down. And what that does is it permanently alters our brain chemistry. And it permanently affects how our brain processes information. When it happens in the early days of our life, it's called DTD, developmental trauma disorder. It means that you get traumatized when during the time your brain was developing, and that's like you get drunk, drink gallons of whiskey when you're 10 years old. It affects your the way you develop. DTD, developmental trauma disorder, affects our brain. And what it does, now it's a whole lot more detailed than what I'm explaining to, but this is, so what it does is it controls how our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems work. So sympathetic nervous system is when we're under stress, we're under pressure, we're feeling threat. Parasympathetic nervous system is when we're being cool, relaxed, calm, digging music, our lovers, just that's when the parasympathetic nervous system is on. When we get traumatized and our brain chemistry gets altered permanently, the sympathetic nervous system is on all the time. And we're never completely relaxed. And we're always ready. And when something reminds us, even though we may not be conscious of it, when something reminds us of that original trauma, we go into that traumatic state. What else it does, being traumatized, is that it alters our DNA. And then we pass it on to our children and the next generation. And then the next generation takes that dysfunction, that brain injury, and gets better at it and become more dysfunctional, and then passes it on to the next. And inevitably, we become attracted to those that have been fucked up too. And so we put those two DNAs together, then we take it going even farther. And then what happens is we can find a whole race of people living at the bottom of the rung because their brain has been traumatized for 5 generations. Or we struggle our whole lives, and some people never get past it just because we got traumatized. That's being traumatized. In my life coaching work, what I do is I help people identify what they feel like when they're in panic mode. See, I can't have somebody cure PTSD, but I can help somebody to identify what they're going through when they're going through it. And I can help them identify it and take control of it and protect themselves. And that's part of my life coaching.
That's a beautiful service to offer people. I tell people sometimes I went to therapy, and I didn't really realize that I had PTSD. And my therapist was asking me, well, how do you feel? And I tell her things, and she's like, that's not a feeling. How do you feel? And I tell her things, she's like, that's not a feeling. And finally I realized I had no idea how I felt ever.
And right. Okay. So the thing is that what I've shared with you comes from living with PTSD. And what I do, so I'm not telling you a way to handle something because I read it in a book. I'm sharing this with you because I lived it and still live it. And there's a difference. So that when I connect with you, I can see and sense, not the exact feeling, but I'll know the intensity. I won't know what the fear is or what's caused that, but I'll know what it feels like and I'll know how to change it. So it's one thing, really, okay? There is one thing that every PTSD episode that you have had, one common denominator. Do you know what it is? That one, every single time you have had an episode of PTSD, there is one common denominator.
Terror?
That's one, but that's not quite the one.
No.
It always ends.
That's true.
Now, when you know something is going to happen, you can then determine when it will happen. So if I say to you, you're in the midst of a PTSD episode, if I say to you, you know what, so this is, what day is today? Is it Tuesday? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So if I say to you, Lindsay, this is Tuesday. You're in a PTSD episode. Will you be finished it by next Tuesday? Oh yeah, I'll be through that. Oh okay. Well, would you be through it? And you will be. Yeah. So then I'll say, well, will you be through it? On Monday? Oh, well, maybe. Well, how about Saturday? Could you do that? So what I've done when I say, can you do it on next Tuesday? What I've done is I've taken your frozen brain and I've shown you something that only we humans can do on this planet. And what I did is I showed you the future. So when our analytical brain, it's our analytical brain that gives us the ability to see the future. Not the future as a psychic sees it, but the future as today is Tuesday, therefore tomorrow is Wednesday. If this is August, then next month is September. That's seeing the future and the past. So it takes our analytical brain rather than our middle and reptilian lower brain, because this part of our brain, those two parts of our brain, is here and now. Cannot see the future, cannot see the past. It's just RFN, right fucking now. So that's all it can be. Now our reptilian brain, which is the most powerful part of our brain, has no thought, has no awareness. It has, am I alive? Am I dead? Am I hungry? Am I not? There's no social being. There's no language. There's no thought. It's all about keeping the body alive. The middle brain can often be called the mammal brain. And we humans are mammals, and we share in common similar types of social behaviors. So reptiles don't interact. They're not smart enough to recognize that the person on the other, the being on the other side, or that there is a being, there's not enough awareness to realize that we're related. Mammals have that capability. Mammals are social. We're pack animals. We work together in a group, right? Okay, so we have all those sociological abilities and instincts, but not the ability to see the future or patterns. It's our upper brain, our analytic, where we all have, and the brighter you are, the bigger your frontal lobes are, So I guess the deal is to have big front lobes. Anyway, so that also happens to be the last part of our brain that developed, and it's the weakest part of our brain, and it gets overridden by the mammal and the reptilian brain. And what happens is we don't even know that it's happened. And we go into panic mode and we don't even know we're in panic mode. So when I tell you today is Tuesday and you know that, and then this time next week is Tuesday and you know that to be the truth, you're now able to begin to see the future and that this will end. So you know that it will, because of, going through all the terrible times, you'll get through it by Tuesday or Monday or Saturday. Or you know what? I know I can get through it now. And you can do that. Now, there are other things that you do. One of the things that when we're in panic mode or in trauma, when we're being reactive, is that we don't feel safe. And actually, we feel scared shitless. So what you do is have a little bit to eat, drink something, take care of your basic needs that make you feel safe. Even if you put yourself in a blanket or have your dog come and lay on your lap or do stuff that is a routine that makes you feel safe. And you just keep saying to yourself, this ends, I know, because it always has. And then you'll get that sense of control. And what I've just done, what we've just done, incidentally, is help create a neural pattern. Because we got your big brain working. And that neural pattern is, you see, when we're in panic mode and the reptilian brain takes over, there's no learning. But when we're relaxed and our analytical mind is working, we learn. So if you've never dialed 911 in a state of emergency, you may not be able to do it because you're not capable of learning. But if you've dialed 911 once, you don't have to learn it and you'll be able to do it. And what we've done with you is that we've created a new neural pattern. You know absolutely it always ends. You know that. We've created that neural pattern. And when you get into that mode, just say, this will end. And keep saying it. And you'll get that sense of control.
I love that. See, anybody can be a time traveler.
Absolutely. Well, we all are if we want to open our minds to it.
It's a beautiful thing. Well, did you want to tell stories of Dr. Stephanie Strathdy and Dr.
Oh, that
Thomas
one.
Patterson?
Okay, sure. I'll tell you that story. It's a true story, by the way.
Yay.
So, Stephanie Strathdy came to me for a reading in Toronto a little over 30 years ago. She had just finished her PhD in epidemiology. And Stephanie over the years. I've been her psychic counselor. She now is at the University of Southern California. She is a professor of epidemiology. She's associate dean of the epidemiology department of Southern California University, and she's got like 1,000 awards, and like this woman is in the top end of her field, and one of the most brilliant people on the planet. She's well renowned for her advanced research in AIDS as well as other types of diseases. Her husband Tom, another heavyweight by the way, in both many ways. Tom has a PhD in experimental psychology, and he has a PhD in psychiatry. He's a professor of experimental psychology and psychiatry at the University of Southern California, and he too is an associate dean of that department. So these are heavyweights. Tom is a great big mountain of a guy, about 6'5". There's a difference in age. I guess Stephanie's in her early 50s. Tom's in his mid 70s now. So there's that gap. Tom, and I describe Tom as an Indiana Jones kind of guy. He's a genius. He's a professor, but he's an outdoorsman, and he's a macho man's man. Two different times in Tom's life, he's been captured and almost starved to death. Once doing research in South America, and he got captured by, or in Central America, one of the two. He got captured by the Sandinistas and was in a concentration camp, and he damn near starved to death. Anyway, and incidentally, over the years, Tom went from being kind of like an athletic guy to ballooning up over 300 pounds. I did a reading for Tom about a year and a half or so before he and Stephanie went away on another one of their dream vacations. In this reading, I said to Tom, this was just a small part of the reading. I said to Tom, by such and such a date, and it might have been 2016, by such and such a date, you're going to lose at least 100 pounds or more. However, at the same time, there's an illness that's forming, and you're going to get as sick as you possibly could get without dying, and you're going to lose 100 pounds. I don't know what the destiny is, Tom. The destiny could be you losing 100 pounds. And if that's the case, if you get serious about your health and your weight, I'm thinking you could lose the weight before you get sick, lose the 100 pounds and miss the illness. Either way, you're going to lose 100 pounds. And it's up to you. You can do it the hard way or you can do it the easy way. And they were my words. So Tom and I scared the shit out of him for a little while. And he went on a diet for a couple of days and then went back to normal, and, right? Anyway, so a year and a half later, they go to this trip to Egypt. Tom's got trouble with his stomach anyway. And he goes away. They're in a pyramid, exploring pyramids, blah, blah. Tom gets really, really sick in the pyramid and they have to carry him out. And he's in terrible shape. He gets back to the hotel. He's getting delirious, and Stephanie, her husband, or his wife, takes him to emergency in Cairo. And Tom catches the most potent superbug on the planet. And it was 100% antibiotic resistant. And that means if you get that superbug, you die. There's no cure. So Tom and Stephanie had like you know, gold card status travel insurance, and they were medevac from Egypt to Germany to a special clinic. Tom was in isolation. Everybody around him was wearing hazmat suits, and he was in a coma. And while Tom was sick, he went into septic shock 7 times, which is like major league. That doesn't happen very often because most people die before that. So my clients, they can call me when they're in trouble. They call me and I have a special relationship with Stephanie, and to a degree Tom, where she can call me anytime, and we have that connection. And this was during Christmas of that year. I also happened to have had the flu that year, and I was really sick at Christmas. And I was thinking about them, but I felt terrible. And I was thinking about them, and then I was sitting at my computer and Skype, as you know, on Skype, I saw that it was Stephanie, and I answered right away. And this is what I said to her: "What's taken you so long? I've been waiting for you." And I was. Anyway, she told me what was going on with Tom. And I told her that you know, I made a mind link with Tom. And what I told her is that Tom will survive this. And I met with Stephanie every day. I thought that I was going to be her support through this, and indeed I was. I never realized that in forming a mental link with Tom, I knew what was going on with him 24/7. And when he was unconscious, which he was most of that 8-month period, I knew when he was in trouble. I knew when he was letting go. I could sense when his vital signs were dropping. I could sense when he was getting stronger. Every day I had a meeting with Stephanie. And Stephanie, I'm sure you've seen the TV program, I just forgot it. The Big Bang Theory and Sheldon Cooper, right? Stephanie has a memory like Sheldon Cooper. It's unbelievable. But both Tom and Stephanie are in there, the major leagues of brilliance, you know. So every day I would give Stephanie a report as to where Tom was at and what he was doing. And every day Stephanie would tell me what I had said the day before, or the day before that, or the day before that. And it was the first time in my life that I had been given that actual feedback every day, all the time. And it went on for months. When it got so that I was so connected with Tom that I started being about 2 or 3 days ahead of what the doctors were sensing. And I could tell when his vital signs were going to drop rather than just knowing that they had dropped. And the way I don't have any medical training, so I would describe it in the way I would understand it and describe it that way. And then it got that I was a few days ahead, but the way I would give the information, the doctors would use similar colloquialisms as I used. And they started doing that, the same colloquialisms as the way I was expressing things. And one thing I said to Stephanie, as I said, you have to look after yourself because this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Like 2 days later, the doctor said, Stephanie, you have to look after yourself. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And things like that were happening, right? Okay, so there was one point in Germany. Now, when and he was in isolation, everybody wearing the hazmat suits and stuff like that. He was in isolation. Now, I knew that Tom was going to live because I visualized the candle. And when the flame was strong, I knew he was okay. When the flame flickered, I knew there was problems. And there was this one point when the flame looked like it was going to blow out. And it scared me because I knew that if that flame went out, that meant he died. And, I connected with Tom, and he was cold. It was dark. He didn't understand what was going on. He could hear the doctor's voices, and he was getting weak, and he was getting ready to let go. This is in the book. I told Stephanie, Tom needs to see his daughters. Yesterday would have been a good day. Today's a good day. Tomorrow's not so good. And if you wait longer than tomorrow, don't bother. That night, Tom's daughters arrived in Germany and went into isolation, wore hazmat suits, came up to their father. And that moment, his vital signs started getting stronger and evolving. And Tom writes about it in the book, about the experience when he was in hallucination. Now, he didn't describe it as getting the message from me, but he did describe it, and he described it very much like I was. And he also went on to say that he could hear voices all around him. I told Stephanie during that time, you can find a cure. And she was in panic mode and bouncing off the walls. And I said to her, in your life experience, you have seen things like this, not exactly the same, but you have dealt with emergencies like this. You've seen processes like this all your life, and you have the ability and the knowledge to find a cure. You have it, and you can find it. And she decided that she was going to find a cure for her dying husband. And the clocks went tick tock, tick tock. And she did. And now I'm telling you about my role. And there were 3 times when Tom was sick that if I hadn't been doing that job, my job, Tom would have died. But I'm not the star of the show. Stephanie is number 1, but Stephanie formed a team of some of the most brilliant some of the most brilliant scientists on the planet. And they set up a rescue plan to find a cure. And Stephanie found it. So she had narrowed it down to 3 different processes. And she used to run things by me every day. And she ran this by me. And she said, I found 3 that, and there wasn't very much time. She had to make a decision. And she had all the scientific information and background, and she was running it by me. And she said, okay, let me tell you about the 3. And I said, okay. She said, now the first one is phages. And I said, that's the one. And she said, well, let me tell you about it. And I said, that's the one. And she said, well, let me tell you about it. And I said, okay, that's the one. And she said, then let me tell you about the other 2. And she told me about the other 2. I said, that's the one. And she said, why? And I said, because they're like little Pac-Man, and they will go after the superbug and attack the superbug and eat it. And she said, that's exactly what it does. Now, do you know what phages are?
Only really mildly because of a really random thing. So no.
Excrement.
Oh wow, I didn't know.
Excrement. It is found in sewer water. It's shit. Now, during the 1930s, very early 40s in Russia, they were doing experiments, injecting fresh stool into people's bodies who had issues with bowel, intestines, and things like that. And the concept was the healthy bacteria would attack the unhealthy bacteria. Now, there was some success, but all research stopped when penicillin became invented, Because, like, here you are, you can have a pill or a turd.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to have, right? Okay, well, I'm a pill man myself, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, there was no more research. When superbugs became rampant, research around the world started, but it had never been done on a human before. Tom, the doctors were afraid to do it, and they had to get special approval. The American Army got involved, the American Navy got involved, several different laboratories got involved, companies donated their own phages. It became a collaboration. And the doctors, they waited so long. Tom had lost more than 100 pounds. His body was deteriorating. His muscles were deteriorating. He was about 2 or 3 hours away from death. And when they finally injected him with phages, and the doctors did not know if they injected him, if that was going to kill him or not. And they injected Tom IV, intravenously with phages. And about an hour later, his vitals, now here's a guy that's an hour or two away from dead. And an hour later, his vital signs start getting stronger. So they zapped him with some more. Oh, by the way, it's not raw shit. It gets sterilized, and they can change the DNA and alter it so to attack a certain disease. So it's all that kind of stuff, and it's sterilized. So then they hit him again. They gave him another needle. Sorry, street stuff, right? Then they gave him another needle. And his vital signs got stronger and stronger. And throughout the night, they were zapping him. The next morning, Stephanie was there, and Tom got zapped again. And she was looking over on her husband, and he opened his eyes. And he came out of the coma, and he looked at her for a couple of moments. He then closed his eyes and fell asleep. But he didn't go into a coma, and he never went into a coma again. And by the treatment with phages over time, the superbug was destroyed. And that's the first time in history that superbug has been defeated. And it changed the way medicine treats superbugs. Since that time, scientists have considered that finding a substance that could attack a malignant brain cell or another type of illness. And as a result of that experiment, things have started opening up. During that time, I told Stephanie that she would be writing a book. I also told her that it would be made into a movie. Stephanie wrote the book. It's called The Perfect Predator. A big amount of my part was eliminated by the publisher. They felt they wanted to keep the scientific part, the story, not the psychic part. However, I mentioned in the book 25 or 26 times. And Stephanie has talked about and gone on shows with me and talked about what my role was with Tom. And that was The Perfect Predator.
Wow.
Incidentally, it's an award-winning book, and Stephanie was acknowledged as that year in the top 50 of the most innovative and best scientists of the year. She got the Time Magazine award for that, or another major thing, that's one of them. And then Tom is back and alive and thriving.
And 100% of what you said came true and was exactly.
And he lost more than 100 pounds.
Yeah, and almost died. Got all as close as you could get to dying without dying.
You couldn't get any closer.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was And now I lived it 24/7, and it had a really big effect on my body. And it took more than a year to recover from it. Recently, I was involved with a woman that was had terminal cancer, and I created a mind link very similar to, I vowed I would never do it again, famous last words.
Yeah.
And I created a mind link with her. And my job was to keep her feeling safe, calm, and secure, and positive. And again, I lived with her in my head and my mind, 24/7 for from January of 2020 to April of 2021. And she succumbed to her illness then.
I'm so sorry.
Yes, I've had a mind link with other people in the past that they were completing their life. I've experienced it. Others. This one was really deeply affected me because of such a beautiful person, and she wanted to live so badly, and I wanted her to live so badly. So I was helping her get through it. And so this was right in the middle of the peak of the pandemic. And we here in Toronto, or we here in Ontario, we still aren't officially out of lockdown. We've been in lockdown in one form or another for 18 months. And during the peak of the pandemic, there were many times this woman had to go to the hospital and her family couldn't come and visit her. She would be isolated. And it was my unconscious or my psychic connection with her that was keeping her balanced, and as well as I knew when she would be in trouble, so I would talk her down with text. We practiced that, learning to get in touch with the trauma part, and we practiced doing that with doing by text, and then we started doing it by on video like you and I are. So and I'd help her get calm and feel safe.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful service you were able to share with her. But how horrible that she had to go through it like that alone and cut off, and obviously not alone, thank God. But
Yeah. Yes.
yeah, and that
I was linked to her when her soul left her body.
does that mean that you experienced death in a way?
I've never thought about that. I experienced her experience of dying.
Interesting.
I have connected with several people that are dying, and each experience is different.
Wow.
It's a different completion. So whatever I'm going to experience, it will be different than any others. So I don't know what my death will be. It will be different.
Is that something that you try not to look at or see, your own death, or?
If this were my last moment on the earth, whatever it means to go to my maker, whatever, I would go to my maker and I would go, Yahoo, what an incredible ride this has been. And I'll go there with no regrets. So I've been at that state of mind about 10 years. So I would have, now I don't want that. I have so much to do still. I come out of my semi-retirement, like I think it was you. I've come out of my semi-retirement from doing, 500-600 readings a year and back to working full time. Let me tell you about my day today, okay?
Yeah.
Because this is my Tuesday morning. Tuesday. By the way, we're launching my new podcast.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So last year, Michelle Freed became my
PR media.
yes, that's correct. That's right. And she offered this to me because I was on a couple of her shows and she was impressed with how I come across, and she suggested that I might like to go on podcasts, and I said, well, maybe not, because I'd kind of retired. I wasn't doing shows, and she kind of convinced me, and she said, why don't you just give it a try? So last August 11th I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And on August 11th, I started. And by April 30th this year, I had appeared on, that was 37 weeks, I appeared on 33 podcasts. And it was wonderful to be doing this again. A few months ago, Michelle said, have you ever considered having your own podcast? And I said, no, I don't have the literacy skills. I don't have that kind of ability. No. Anyway, she kept going and we decided. So in a few weeks, my podcast called My Side of the Crystal Ball is going to be released. So now I was responding to a question you asked about, so I'm telling you what I did today. So this morning at 8:30, I did an interview with a woman in Australia for my podcast. At 11 o'clock this morning, I did another interview with the woman, and she was in Boston, and she's going to be on a segment of my podcast. At 12 o'clock, I did a psychic reading for a person. At 2 o'clock, I did another psychic reading. At 4 o'clock, I had a meeting with Michelle and her daughter, my publicist. Then at 6 o'clock, I did a psychic reading. And at 9 o'clock, we started talking. That's my day. And I haven't had a break. And it's just wonderful to be alive doing this. It's great.
I feel it. It is very exciting. I love days like that when you can just get all of this in at once.
Yep.
Sometimes,
well, actually, it's
like
the way it's been.
When you were asking, was that you that I said that to? That's how I get.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait,
yes.
What's going on?
Yeah. That's right. It just all becomes blur, but it's a happy blur.
It's a happy blur.
So that was my day. Yesterday was a similar day, except that I spent like 5 hours slaving over a hot crystal ball doing readings. I don't really read a crystal. I have a crystal ball, but I don't really use it. But I just jokingly say I slaved all day over a hot crystal ball.
I love that.
Yeah.
So this is really exciting, and so today is almost the exact to the day year that you started doing podcasts.
What a coincidence!
That's very interesting. And then you're going to start your own very, very soon, and that's really cool. My Side of the Crystal Ball. So people
My
can
Side
check
of the
that
Crystal
out
Ball.
on.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's not like yet been birthed.
Right.
So, but we're going to start be doing the promo. But if people are looking for me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and my website www.robertlindsaymilne.com.
Robert Lindsay Milne, and Lindsay without an E, like my name.
Yes, my Lindsay is smaller than your Lindsay.
Yes. Well, and Lindsay is traditionally a men's name, so it's more fitting on you, perhaps. But...
It's a generational thing. My grandfather's name was Lindsay Williamson, and when he died, every boy that was born in that side of the family either was given the first name as Lindsay or the middle name.
Do you have kids?
I have a daughter who's 52 years old.
but she's not named Lindsay?
She's not a, well, nobody in my, well, actually everybody in my family is a great psychic now. When I was starting out, they spit on me, but now everybody thinks it's great. Kimberly never really was impressed with her old man and what he does. So, you know how kids are, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess I actually have a ton more questions, but it's been a long night and time, so maybe we'll have you back another time if you'd like.
I would love to come back on with you, and maybe in a little while you come on my podcast.
I would love to.
Really, that'd be fabulous.
Yeah.
I know we were supposed to talk for an hour, but something tells me we got a little bit farther than that.
We've got 2 hours right now, and people are.
Are you kidding?
Strong, so,
and
yeah.
I'm still going. Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful to be alive.
It really is. It's a beautiful.
Isn't it great?
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So, if you had any final thoughts to share with people, what might they be?
Be kind. You can always be kind.
I get better and better at that all the time. Beautiful suggestion. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. And this has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom according to the dreamer, Robert Lindsay Milne. Robert, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And to everyone else out there, every single one of you is a time traveler, whether you're hopping forward or backward or sitting right here, right now, and you're always moving ever towards your destiny. So reach out to it and accept it and love it and go faster and further every day. And until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, Rat Kings. It's the rap machine. Yeah, check it. Gray bearded pirate, my motherfucker unknown. Yeah, come on. In the place with my fist up, meaning I resist the bullshit that they feed us and lead us. This is just a part of the process, man. Just watch this, cause this shit's about to get crazy like a mosh pit. We lost it, toss it, let's start it again. Cause now with technology, with smarter men and women, this is the beginning, not the end. If this is the message of hope that I send, look on your TV, it's a culture of death. They'll keep on lying to the very last breath. We keep on striving and spreading the truth. It's hard to survive in this world for the youth. The door is closed, the old world is dead. Let's have an age of understanding instead. I'll include you and you include me. Let's see what we can build with some positivity. Let's go, you're moving too slow. Let me see your hands if you know what I know. Come on.
Rap like mummy, ain't no dummy in my rhyming. Started flowing freestyling, now they rhyming loud silence. On with the violence, bodies piling with the gray-bearded pirate. On your TV in 4K 3D virtual reality. Casualty of urban warfare. I know but I'm not scared, just prepared and aware. Shining my light through the tunnel of hope. Into the rope, but I'ma give it one more pull. Till the family is full. Take the bull by the horns and lead it to the slaughter. That would be harder and you would be softer. Sometimes I'm a monster, and you forever imposter. With just champagne and lobster. This royalty, the way it was supposed to be. Hopefully the new door opens and the old one closes. With way more focus and growth to mold us. And the truth that they should have told us.
To them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rulers that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that a flicker rate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet. Everyone got a gift, everyone got a light. They want you to forget that ish, cause they can't dim the bright. The positive vibration takes you past the sign shackles. From the sewers and the alleys in the moving castles. Who these assholes really serve it with an exposed Achilles surgeon around the corner lurking to prove ascension Trump's perversion. Learn them to catch fish and unplug the signal. Show them the simpletons now build the fucking temples.